Hello everybody and welcome back to English with Catherine. Bienvenue. Aujourd'hui, on va parler du passé. Today we are going to talk about the past simple. Mais cette vidéo va être en anglais car il faut pratiquer votre compréhension orale, non? Ne vous inquiétez pas, je vais parler lentement et n'oubliez pas les sous-titres en français si vous en avez besoin. Most of my students make the following mistakes. They either use the present simple tense to talk about the past, like I go to the dentist yesterday or I see him last week. This is what I call lazy English. Or they translate word for word from their language. For example, French people have le prétérit, which uses the auxiliary verb have and the past participle. J'ai fait mes devoirs hier soir. I did my homework yesterday. But it's translated word for word into I have done my homework last night. So they are actually using the present perfect here and not the past simple. The present perfect is incorrect in this sentence. I talk more about the present perfect in another video. Take a look at that. But in this video, I will explain the structure of the past simple, talk about regular and irregular verbs. Yeah, I know, they're the nasty ones. How to use the past simple in the negative and in questions. Talk about the pronunciation of ed endings, which I know many of you have problems with. And hang around to the end of the lesson because I will give you some tips on how to remember those irregular verbs more easily. And then there's a quiz, so you can test your knowledge on all of that. Okay, let's get started on how to form the past simple. But first, let's look at a little story with some past simple verbs. Napoleon Bonaparte was a French military leader. He was born in 1769. He became a general at the age of 24 and won many battles for France. Napoleon's ambition and public approval inspired him to go further, and he became the first emperor of the French in 1804. Napoleon's last battle was the Battle of Waterloo on the 18th of June, 1815. Napoleon surrendered in July 1815 and died in 1821 while in captivity. These are all examples of the past simple. We use it to talk about things in the past that are finished. Very often, the past simple ends in ed. We just add ed to the end of the verb. These, of course, are regular verbs. For example, we asked him to come to the concert, but he declined. Paul cooked dinner and his wife cleaned up after. Who decided on this movie? It's terrible. Now you try. Yes, very good. It's washed and fixed, both regular verbs. But many verbs are irregular, and this is where the past simple does not end in ed. For example, win changes to won, write changes to wrote, go changes to went, and cut doesn't change, it's just cut. To be changes to was or were, depending on the subject. Irregular verbs are a pain because they just don't follow a pattern. There isn't one rule you can use for all of them. And most of the common verbs are irregular. Thankfully, however, there are not that many irregular verbs, and there are ways you can memorize them more easily. In a minute, I will give you some great tips on how to remember them. Now let's look at questions and negatives in the past simple. We use did and didn't plus the infinitive. For example, go, see, do, etc. The positive is I saw, he learned, we did. The negative is I didn't see, he didn't learn, we didn't do. And questions we use did. Did I see? Did he learn? Did we do? The verb to be is a little different. The past of be is was or were. The positive is I was, we were. The negative is I wasn't, we weren't. Questions: was I? Were you? Or were we? Take this conversation as a typical example using the past simple in all its forms. Did you see the movie last night? No, I didn't watch TV last night. Oh, that's a pity. It was great. It was about the environment and how we can reverse climate change. Well, I went for a walk and picked up pieces of rubbish on the footpath, so I did my bit for the environment. Okay, now try yourself the same conversation. See if you can remember how to conjugate these verbs in the past simple. Well done. Now let's move on to the pronunciation of those ed endings. All regular verbs in the past simple finish in ed, like this one. But do we pronounce it failed, failed, or failed? But there's also a lot of adjectives that end in ed as well, like assorted, amused, captivated. So this little pronunciation lesson will not just help with the past simple pronunciation, but with many other words as well. Okay, there are 3 different ways we can pronounce ed endings. With a T sound, with a D sound, and with an id sound. So, if the verb ends in a T or a D sound, then the pronunciation is id. Want changes to wanted. Decide changes to decided. Note here that decide actually ends in the letter E, but it's a D sound, decide. The E is silent. If the verb doesn't end in a T or a D sound, like we saw in the previous examples, the only other choices is that this ed ending sounds like a T or it sounds like a D with a silent E, in fact. But it doesn't really matter, to be honest, if you try and say D or a T sound, because when they come out, it sounds really, really similar. All we have to do is to not use the id ending when necessary. Just to give you a clear example, clear picture, let's take 2 examples. Stopped ends in a T sound, stopped. But if I try to pronounce it with a D sound, it's almost exactly the same. Stopped, stopped. To me, it sounds the same. And this is especially the case when you are speaking naturally and the words run into each other. We often don't pronounce the ends of words anyway. For example, I stopped by the shop yesterday. I stopped by the shop yesterday. I don't even pronounce the D. Let's take another example. Allowed finishes in a D sound. Allowed. But if I try to say it in a T sound, in a sentence, it sounds the same. I'm allowed inside the building. I'm allowed inside the building. It's kind of hard to make it a T sound, in fact. So basically what I am saying is that there are really only two sounds you need to remember for these ed endings. The id sound after verbs that end in a t or a d sound, and for all other verbs we just use the td sound on its own. Some practice for you. Pause the video and try saying these words out loud. How did you go? Liked. Yes, it's a T/D sound because like, L-I-K-E, doesn't end in a T or a D sound. Started. Notice the id, started, because start finishes in a T, start. So we have to add the id sound afterwards. Fished. Fished. It is not fished. Good. It is fished or fished with the D or the T sound. It doesn't matter because the sound is so similar. So I hoped that helped you to remember how to pronounce the ed endings. So let's get back to those tricky irregular verbs. How do we remember all of them? In the entire English language, there are about 200 irregular verbs. I have put a link to the full list in the description of this email. If we remember that there are about 170,000 words in the English language, 200 is not a lot to remember, is it? Nevertheless, 200 is still 200. So how do we remember them? Here are 5 great tips to make it easier for you. Number 1, learn by heart the 10 most common irregular verbs. And here they are. Pause the video to take a couple of minutes to learn them now. Yeah, now. Say, said. Go, went. Come, came. Know, knew. Get, got. Give, gave. Be, was, were. Find, found. Think, thought. See, saw. Okay, quick test. What is the past tense of find? Yes, it's found. What is the past tense of get? Yes, it's got. And the past of come? Came. That's right. Nice one. Another cool way to remember past simple irregular verbs is through games. The Macmillan Dictionary has a fun little game to learn. You just spin the wheel and it will land on a verb and you put in the tenses. Flashcards are another great way to learn. On this website, ESL Flashcards, you can download some irregular verbs, print them out, cut them up, and practice with them. Another fun game you can play is to listen to a text and try to write down all the simple past words that you hear. This will also help you with spelling. I tell a story in the simple past on my website. You can download the audio and transcript from a link in the description. The third way is to put the past simple into sentences. I feel personally that there is no better way to learn vocabulary than to put them in your own sentences that relate to your life. You could make any verb relative to your own life. All you have to do is have a list of irregular verbs in front of you and imagine a scenario. For example, if you have a cat, you can say, my cat slept all day yesterday but came out at night. Then he crept up on me while I was working on my computer. This way, you not only use the verb, but you get a visual of your cat sleeping and creeping, and so you will remember it more easily. Or if you like TV series on Netflix, like Outlander, for example, in my case, you can make a sentence like, As Jamie rode his horse through the forest, he felt anxious about Claire's safety. Okay, I'm not being very imaginative there, but you get my drift. The fourth way to remember these verbs easily is to group them together. For example, take a group where the verbs don't change. For example, cut, cut, put, put, cost, cost, burst, burst. And go down through the list and find these common verbs. Another group could be verbs where only one vowel changes. Awake, awoke. Arise, arose. Cling, clung. Begin, began. A third group could be words where you lose a vowel. Shoot, shot. Choose, chose. Feed, fed. You can look through the list of verbs and find patterns by yourself. The final way of learning irregular verbs in the past simple is to make a rap song. Here's a funny video I found where a teacher made a rap song for the verbs in the past simple, and it's excellent in my opinion. Take a look.
Before I take, took, taken, you shake, shook, shaken, wake, woke, woken to the style I'm creating. Think, thought, thought, seek, sought, sought. Listen to the lesson that I teach, taught, taught. Don't sleep, slept, slept. I creep, crept, crept. I sneak, snuck, snuck up. You leap, leapt, leapt. I keep, kept, kept. Having fun, I'm never beat, beat, beaten. I win, won, won. Do, did.
Or here's another one.
Mr. Morton walked down the street. Mr. Morton walked. Mr. Morton talked to his cat. Mr. Morton talked. Hello, cat. You look good. Mr. Morton was lonely. Mr. Morton was. Mr. Morton is the subject of the sentence, and what the predicate says he does. Mr. Morton knew just one girl. Mr. Morton knew.
Or you can learn through real songs.
You were my earth. You didn't know all the ways I loved you. No, I heard that you settled down, that you...
All the links of these videos are in the description of this video. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Do you feel a bit more confident about learning the past simple now? Are you ready to do the quiz? Let's go. And the pronunciation is toured, lifted, twisted, jumped. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget these other videos to help you learn the tenses, the future tense and the present perfect. Thanks for sticking around, and see you all very, very soon. Bye bye.